What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 5 of the Div Dive. That rhymes. Today we got Matt Varughese of 8020. Just an absolute legend. Somebody I'm a huge fan of and I've looked up to ever since I started building a Webflow agency. He runs 8020, which is a big agency in this Webflow ecosystem. They've done a lot of amazing work for Chance the Rapper, Hassan Minaj, Ellen DeGeneres, and a bunch of amazing startups like Wave, Avanta, and so many more. So we chatted about all that. But 8020 is a part of a larger organization that recently went public called Tiny. So we chatted about how that relationship came to be, what it's like working within that ecosystem, and everything related to that because it was super interesting. We also chatted about cold emails and how he secured so many notable clients. We also chatted about what it's like to run a large agency, blind Optimism, the future of Webflow, and so much more. It was a really candid conversation, and I was super surprised how open and honest he was about a lot of the stuff that he does with 8020. It's just somebody I admire greatly, so I hope you get as much value out of it as I did. And before you dive in, please do me a favor and just hit like and subscribe below. It means the world to me. And without further ado, let's dive in.
Welcome. Let's dive in.
Matthew, thank you for joining me, my man. I'm very excited to have you today.
Of course. That one threw me off. No one calls me by my government name these days, but I'll take it, man. It's a pleasure to be here. It's so great to see you. It's so great to hang, as always. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. I've always had tons of respect for you and your journey and the work that you do with 8020. You guys are, top of the class to me when it comes to Webflow agencies, and I take a lot of inspiration for what you guys do when thinking about running my agency. So, yeah, respect you.
I appreciate it, man. It's definitely a work in progress, and I feel like every day I'm failing at it, but it's very kind of you to say that.
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to get into all of it. I figured we could dig into how 8020 came to be, some of the work you guys been doing, and some of the cool stuff you guys got coming up, if that sounds cool to you.
Yeah, totally. Where do you want to start?
So I think it'd be a good place to start to throw it back before 8020 and just chat about Webster Peace. I'd love to hear how that agency came to be and maybe how you got started just designing and developing websites real quick.
Yeah, so the summary of the story is I am a child of Indian immigrants, and so as a result of that, my three options when I'm in high school trying to go to college, figure out what I'm going to do, my three options as prescribed by my folks are doctor, lawyer, and engineer. My sister's a doctor, all my cousins are doctors. I don't really have any other options. But I knew I would be miserable doing one of those three. I wasn't really thrilled about any of them. I'm terrible at science. I'm okay at math, but it just didn't seem like a life lit behind a desk, working on schematics, or in my case, I was petroleum engineering. So working in an oil field, it just doesn't sound like a lot of fun. So in my senior year of high school, or to rewind, in my, junior year of high school, I had taken a fundamentals of technology class in high school. And essentially one of the things that we were asked to do is build a website using Weebly. And Weebly was pretty new at the time. And I was honestly just enamored by the fact that you could create something from a high school lab, your home, wherever, and anyone else in the world with an internet connection can access it and interact with it, upload things and things like that. So I thought that was really just fascinating. And I just had a lot of fun with it. And then the next year I took a class which taught me Dreamweaver. And so I learned that a bit too. And I was still just really enjoying it. And I was like, maybe there's a business to be had here. And so in between, in my lunch period in my senior year of high school, I had decided to try and start an agency. And I did all of the things that I'm sure multiple one-man studios are used to. I would in all of the copy on the website, it said, we are an established web design and development agency. I tried to make it seem like things were popping all the time. It was this massive agency, but it was just a 17-year-old in high school working out of the high school lab. And so But I'd come up with the name Webster Piece. I decided that it was going to be, I really liked, there's like a lot of interesting agencies here in Oklahoma City where I live. But I was like, okay, I think I want this to be a web design agency. And so I started just trying to like build the site, build clients. But like that is by far the hardest thing to do, as I'm sure you understand. Everyone started somewhere, but like you have a really impressive client roster now, and we've talked about this on our last call, but like you have some cool ones that I'm really jealous of. But getting there is really hard. It's especially when you're like young, inexperienced, you don't have a portfolio. It's just kind of a mess. But I was so committed to not being a petroleum engineer that I was like, I gotta figure this out. And so I went to school. I went for petroleum engineering. I switched a while later to a different form of engineering, and then but I did that for about 3 years. At the same time, I was running Webster Piece, and in that time, I'd just been very committed to just trying to find clients, trying to look the part. I would show up to meetings all the time in full-on suits because I had to overcompensate. For like, I had no experience, no clients. I had one client who's still actually a client of mine, and like one of my best friends today. We'll see him tomorrow night. But he ran a dog daycare, and I would go in there and I would wear this blue suit, and all these dogs, like I would just be covered in fur every time I left this place. But I was like, I can't have this guy thinking I'm like a dumb kid trying to run an agency, and like he's putting his site in my hands. So I just tried to hustle and get clients, and then I ended up getting a good number of local clients, and I'd worked in that ecosystem for a while. At some point, I had decided to make a dream clients list because, and you might know this too, I don't know your experience working with local clients, but like local clients only have so much budget and so much like, the scope of the work is kind of limited, but there are people in other larger markets, SF, New York, LA, Chicago, that have more budget and have really interesting ideas that they want to build, and I wanted to be part of that. And so I started designing or keeping a list that I still use to this day called a dream clients list. And it's just an iCloud note. It's the same iCloud note I've used for many years. Like I have just a running list. And I had just put a bunch of clients in there that I really admired, wanted to work with. One of them was Chance the Rapper. And I was like, I'm going to figure out some way, somehow, to work with him. And long story short, and we can get into it if you want to, but I ended up working with him, doing a lot of web work for him, building some stuff on Webflow, being his web liaison between him and Squarespace's corporate office for part of brand engagement he did with them. Long story short, well, not short at all, I ended up selling that agency to the guy that owns 80/20 today, and part of the deal was that I take over one of his companies, which is 80/20. And that is everything I did before 80/20.
Dude, yeah, that's awesome. That's such a similar scenario to like what my journey was a little bit. Like,
really?
Well, it wasn't petroleum engineering, but it was like trades, physical trade. I went to college for it and everything, and I realized I was going to hate it. So I just started doing stuff on the side. I wasn't even doing websites to start. I was doing social media. I was cutting up videos. I was like doing graphic design, a bunch of different things, whatever I could do to figure out something to do that was creative and wasn't the job that I was doing, because I just wanted to quit that so badly. So I just dove in and ended up like, building an agency and stuff like that. But it's funny to hear how. Go ahead.
Were you freelancing? Like, were you a one-man band? How'd you get clients? Like, what did
Yeah, I was freelancing. So like a lot of the freelance stuff I was doing was for like music industry stuff. So it was like show posters, like show videos, just like social media for like a company who did events and stuff like that. And that was like where I took my first dive full-time freelance. When I was doing all that, I was doing it for a couple companies in the city. I live in Edmonton. And then, I started to not like that, and then ended up getting into websites and stuff like that, worked at an agency, and then started Flowsparrow. But it's so crazy how similar like everybody I talked to has a similar story where they had a job that they didn't really like, and then they ended up building websites in their downtime.
Yeah, exactly. I love that, man. That's hustle.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So you mentioned a lot of things like, the Chance the Rapper stuff. I definitely want to dig into that. But I'm super curious about the formation of 80/20 and how that worked out. So from what I gather, you just mentioned that you got in touch with Tiny. Or did they reach out to you? Or how did that conversation even start at the beginning?
Yeah, so the year I had finished working with Chance the Rapper, he had just launched his album. We shipped all our projects, things like that. I was also starting to get more and more active on Twitter, and I had tweet notifications on for this guy that I really admire named Andrew Wilkinson. And Andrew is the co-founder of a company called Tiny, Tiny Capital, some of you might know it as, which owns a lot of companies, a lot of agencies, ones like MetaLab or Z1, 80/20, which is a company I run, but then also household brands like AeroPress, communities like Girlboss, job boards like We Work Remotely, design communities like Dribble and Designer News. So a lot of big names in there. And I just really
Wild.
I empathize with this story a lot because most of the year I live in Oklahoma City, which is in the grand scheme of things, it's a small town. And Andrew lives in Victoria, British Columbia, and has crushed the agency game, gotten these massive clients, has amassed like a solid nest egg, so to speak. And I really admire that. I love these stories of like, oh, I don't have to live in San Francisco or LA or New York to make it. Like, I can make it from anywhere in the world. And so he's someone I looked up to for a long time, and I had tweet notifications on for him. And one day I was going to, I think it was I was on a flight to Rome, like for my first like international vacation or something like that. And I was on a layover. I saw he tweeted that he was looking for a Webflow e-commerce expert, and he needed someone to build a simple 1 to 2 page site for his project. And I had no idea what it was, but I was like fresh off of doing a lot of e-com ops for Chance. And I was also a Webflow moderator at the time, and also trying to build my Webflow kind of like experience in general. And so I responded, and I was like, that's me. And I was like, I want to do this. Like, I don't even care. At the time, I wouldn't have even cared if I got paid. I was like, I got to know this guy. We ended up building the site. It's live today. It's a site where you can buy bronze busts of Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, who are Andrew's heroes. And you can have them shipped to you. And if you look at the code today, you'll still see that like it was so early in Webflow e-commerce that like I jerry-rigged a buy now button because the buy now button didn't exist in Webflow e-commerce at the time. So it's just a bunch of JavaScript that will add things to the cart and then just redirect you to the checkout page. And so
Oh, crazy.
yeah, I know, right? But I built that. And at the same time, Andrew had gotten really into Webflow as a whole. And he was like, he had messaged me and he was like, hey, I really enjoyed working with you. I'm starting this agency called 80/20. Do you want to work here? And I actually told him no. I was like, I'm good. Like, I got my own company. I have my own agency. Like, I don't really want to go be a junior designer somewhere. And he was like, well, how about I introduce you to the CEO and like, you can contract for us through Websterpiece. And I was like, okay. So I actually was a contractor of 80/20 before I ended up co-owning it and taking it over. And so 6 months goes by, CEO decides to step down, and then I get a DM from Andrew one day, which if any of you have talked to Andrew, he's a very straightforward guy. He does not deal with niceties at all. There's no, hi, hope you're well. It was just I think the message said, loved your work, can I buy your company, and you take over mine. And
Wow.
That was the entire DM, and I was pretty taken aback, and I was like, this is a very surreal moment for me. After a little bit of negotiation and legal and U.S., Canadian tax complications, the deal was done, and I became the CEO and one of the partners at 80/20.
Dude, that is so crazy and so interesting. I have a ton of questions because it's super interesting because you don't see agencies getting acquired that
Yeah,
much,
yeah, yeah,
or like maybe I don't see it, but it's such a unique situation that I've just never seen before. And
yeah.
Tiny is such a unique organization as well because I believe they started MetaLab. I think that was
Yeah.
Andrew's like
Yep.
first agency. Was
Hmm.
that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, and they worked with like Slack and a bunch of things, so they have a good understanding of how to run the agency. So I'm curious, like in that ecosystem, how do they help, or like how does your 80/20 integrate with the overall arching kind of company, and how do they help you with your day to day kind of stuff? Because that's super interesting.
Totally. It's a great question. I think first and foremost, this is kind of one of my regrets of my journey is that I never worked at an agency. Like I like the fact that you've worked at an agency because you probably know how they should and shouldn't be run. But like I started Webster Piece literally straight out of high school with I never had a job, in a professional setting, and as a result, I don't really think I knew how to run an agency, like the proper like, oh, you should have SOPs for everything, and this is how your contract should work. You should do an MSA and an SOW. For contractors, you should do this thing. For payroll, you should do this thing. It was kind of like coming into 80/20 because we took a lot of the stuff from MetaLab. So paperwork, processes, things like that. You kind of get a master class like right out of the gate of like, here's how a company should be run. To like at least get it off the ground, make sure you're legally compliant. You've got a finance function, you've got an accounting function, you've got a legal function. Now you got to focus on becoming really good at your technical skills, your design, your development, your recruiting. But one of the things that I think this ecosystem really helps with is like, there's a Tiny CEO's email thread where we'll talk about all sorts of things of like, if you, and it's like all confidential, of course, but it's like people have sent questions and they'll be like, hey, I have this situation. What do I do? And people will chime back and forth, or if there's like an employee that's like wanting to maybe leave a specific agency, a lot of times like it'll get mentioned in the thread and be like, does anyone want to like pick him up? Like, does anyone have an opportunity? It's a really good ecosystem in that regard. And so that's like high level how we work together. On the nitty gritty, we've actually run a lot of joint projects with MetaLab directly, where MetaLab will either lead design and we will do the Webflow development side of things, custom code, things like that. We did that for a company in Austin most recently called Q2, to Pubco. And, but we've also just like, for MetaLab, they have excess lead flow sometimes, or leads that are too small for them, but are massive for us. And so we'll take on a lot of those engagements as well. But that's the biggest way we work together. If there is an opportunity for one of us to slot in with each other, we will. But candidly, one of the things that Andrew loves or really emphasizes is that there is no explicit synergy. Like, we don't have a centralized back office. There's no centralized finance team, so to speak. Like, we all pay for our own finance orgs. We all pay for our own legal. Because we're kind of, the whole purpose of this is that we run independently and we can stand on our own 2 feet. And we just help each other where we can. But it's a really great ecosystem in that regard.
Yeah, that's super interesting because, yeah, like you mentioned, one of the things that really stood out to me was that you started the agency yourself and you didn't really have a lot of people to ask about or how to do all those things. And that is so similar to me because Flowsphere was the first agency I started. Yeah. I still don't have a lot of that stuff figured out or don't know if it's correct. And I don't know who to ask in a lot of those kind of scenarios. So I would find that extremely valuable. And I guess, I mean, that's kind of one of the reasons why I started this podcast is so I can have an opportunity to chat with people like yourself who like, know a little bit more about it, and I can kind of like pull some information and learn how to run my business a little bit better as well. But yeah, that's fantastic. I'm sure having some backing financially, like a place where you could probably holler at and be like, hey, we're out of money right now. Maybe we could work something out or chat about it or something like that, because there's a couple instances with Flow Sparrow where we hit we're
Oh,
cutting
totally.
it pretty close. We're bootstrapped from the beginning, and we're like,
Yeah.
oh, like paying salaries and stuff. Like it can get quite scary. So I'm sure there's some like comfortability there.
Totally. There's definitely a level of that. I think a lot of people don't realize how hard running an agency business is until they do it. So I very much so empathize with your point. There's been points at 80/20, like in the very beginning, there were periods in which I would just stop paying myself so that we could continue to pay contractor salaries or employee salaries or whatever. And we don't do that anymore because we're a significantly more stable organization. But like in the first few months, it's like, shit, I didn't plan out cash flow as well as I could have. And you can, like, we can go to Tiny and ask, but like the goal is that we learn from our mistakes, and better ourselves. Yeah. And that's what we did. I make a lot of mistakes, and I am continuously trying to learn from them and get better from them. So.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think just learning from your mistakes is like the key part about running an agency, and just like running into those mistakes as much as possible and as early as possible, I think is the way to go for sure.
Totally.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, speaking of running agencies, I'd love to hear about 80/20 today and what that looks like. I'm sure it started as a small team, but I'm sure it's kind of grown a little bit. I'm curious what the team looks like right now, and like who do you have in place and stuff like that.
Yeah, 80/20 has evolved a lot in the last 3 years, but especially in the last year, and especially even more so in the last month. When I took over 3 years ago, we were essentially, when I came in, it was a ghost agency, a ghost model that I'm sure you're familiar with, where it's essentially like we have a lot of lead flow, but we don't have any full-time employees. And so we would contract out a lot of the work, kind of like a GC model in construction. And we would just get that all taken care of and essentially manage it all. And that was cool to get off the ground. But that's not a sustainable move as a long-term play for a company, because you're subject to a lot of just variables that are out of your control. Freelancer availability, freelancer rates, issues with that type of engagement. They're not really in your full control like an employee would be. And so you can't really be like, well, spend all your time working on this project today. So it's great from a cash flow perspective. You only pay a contractor when you have the money. Like, you structure your deals accordingly. But it's just not a great way to run a sustainable business, in my opinion. I think some people can do it, but it's not for me. And so we evolved over the years to shift from that model to be all full-time employees. And so we have 13 full-time employees today with a handful of contractors. So I can't say all full-time, but we have a lot of contractors that work nearly 30 hours a week with us or things like that when we need it. It's a mix. Today it's a mix of we have some senior leadership. We have Max Joels, who's just a wonderful human being and our head of development. One of my favorite people. I worked with him at 80/20 when he was a contractor of 80/20. He was, I think, maybe the first person I hired. And he was by far, I love working with that guy. He's a very thoughtful person. But we have him in senior leadership, and then we just hired, after like a 6-month extensive search, we just hired a COO who is incredible, lives in Whistler, and she has made my life nice. It's like, when I say that the company has evolved in the last month, I have so much more time off nowadays. Like, I can just, in the evenings, I bet you can relate to this, in the evenings when I log off, I saw your tweet the other day of like, when I go on vacation, I feel like I can't unwind. Like, I know there's things that need to be done. I know things have to happen. Work needs, I so deeply empathize with that tweet. I think I DM'd you about it. And I think having this new senior leadership in the business, I leave work at maybe I'll still log off maybe somewhat late, 5 or 6, but it's significantly better than a 10 p.m. end time like I was doing before of I gotta work, I gotta get this done. And so I'm very thankful for senior leadership at 80/20. But then we have just like a mix of an incredible dev team, an incredible design team, PM, ops. I think it's a very solid balance. Like on the design side, we have Afrian and Anthony, who are just killers in the design space. But Anthony's also a killer in the dev space and the animation space and the 3D space. He's just like a jack of all trades. And then we have Coco, and we have Jay, and we have Alex, who's one of our most recent hires. And then we have on the PM and ops side, we have Nicole and Natalia and Emmanuel. We just have a really great team that I'm super, super thankful for. And we would not be able to do any of this today without them. I would lose my mind. Yeah, that's the makeup of the team.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I'm glad you found a COO to help ease some of that stress, because I definitely know the fields. You just put everything on your shoulders at all times, and it's it's stressful for sure.
It's so stressful, man. It gets me.
Yeah.
It got to me a lot in the last 3 years. I like the pressure of running a business. No one understands it until you do it. People think that it's like, you work for yourself. You're your own boss. I'm like, no, I have like 32 bosses that I respond to like every day.
Mm-hmm.
It's my employees, my clients, my business partners, my board. Like I respond to a lot of people. And even if you remove a board or remove business partners, there's still so many people for every business owner that exists that you have to make sure is happy, fulfilled, like things are moving along. Like it's a lot of work. And I respect and empathize with anyone that's trying it out, because it's a challenge. I'm well aware of that.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely had some blind optimism going into doing this or starting an agency, because I was just like, easy, got it, not a problem whatsoever.
Yeah.
I could do whatever I want. Very cocky, and then you just get beat down over and over and over.
You're
like, oh my god.
Yeah, that blind optimism though is like, I think, a requirement to start a business. If you are too jaded before you start, you're never going to start it. Like I had a lot of blind optimism that a kid from OKC could make it like in a much bigger and broader arena. And if I had shot myself down or like really tempered my expectations, like I probably should have, like I don't think I would be where I am today. So I think it's an important part for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's almost like a stupidity thing. Like you just like don't even understand what you're getting yourself into, and you just go at it. And I still like just do my best to just think like that all the time. Like I don't know if you noticed, but I'll just like throw up like ideas of businesses sometimes, or little things that I'm trying to do, or like I'll try something, shut it down, and like I'm just like throwing it out there because I like just seeing if it clicks. But it's also just like I'm curious if it works, but it's also like that blind optimism where you're like, I could start a clothing brand, why not? Or whatever, and then you don't even realize until you like start doing it. But that's the fun part I find, and I think that's why I'm more comfortable lately, I think, because I'm just having fun with it, or just try to make sure it's fun, I think.
I think a big shift I made in the last 6 months is I started to try to treat everything in my life, both personally and professionally, as an experiment. And it's like, that's just relieved a lot of pressure for me of like, I don't have to get this perfectly right today. I can toy with it. I can see what sticks. I can put ideas in the world, and it is okay to fuck up and fail. Sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to cuss on this, but I think
it's all good.
Okay. I think it's been a very freeing thing to be like, because I'm telling you, I make so many mistakes that I'm unsure how I've gotten this far. But it's like, if I don't try, then I will never make a mistake, but then I'll never progress. I'll never evolve. I'll never get better. And so if I treat everything as an experiment, then it's like, everything is like, if it works, cool. If it doesn't work, cool. On to the next thing. Like there's not really that much downside if you look at it from that perspective.
Yeah, I'm 100% aligned with you on that. At the beginning of running Flowspur, I put a lot of pressure on myself to do everything perfect,
Yeah.
make sure every project was going out 100%, every team member was doing everything absolutely perfectly, and it just didn't work for me or the team members or nothing. So I kind of like started to let go and be a lot more free with it and just like, okay, yeah, like play with it as an experiment. Like if the business just eats it out of nowhere and goes to zero. Okay, well,
Yeah.
I tried it.
Had
It was fun.
Yeah.
I'll try something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So I want to shift gears a little bit because I really want to talk about that Chance the Rapper the bit.
Okay.
You've been working with like a lot of like celebrities lately. Hassan Minaj, Ellen DeGeneres. And sounds like Andrew Huberman might be coming down the pipeline a little bit, which is crazy to me. So you mentioned Chance the Rapper was like a cold email. Was like, how are these happening? I'm so curious about this.
Did you say how? You cut off for that word.
Yeah. Like, how are you getting in touch with these people, and how are these projects starting? And maybe we could just go by each one because I'm sure each one's different.
Yeah, sure. I am a very, very, very adamant believer that you can cold email almost anyone in this world. There is still like an upper echelon of people that are totally unreachable that even I'm very good at finding people's personal email addresses, and there are people on my dream clients list that I'm like, I have no idea how to get in contact with you. I can't even find your publicist. But I think a very well-crafted cold email to the right person, maybe at the right time, can be very powerful in getting a meeting on the books at the very least. And so with Chance, I had to figure out a way into that circle that kind of got his attention in a very non-traditional way. And because like you can DM anyone on Instagram, but like I've seen some of the DMs of our celebrity clients, and I'm just like, oh, this is a mess. This is just a shit show altogether. Like, it's flooded with things. You're not going to be able to, you don't even click through them because it's overwhelming. I was like, what if I Snapchat geo-filters, like the things that you put on top of your like picture when you take it, they were brand new at the time, and they had also just released their paid version of it. And they were catching on like wildfire. Everyone was like trying to find a cool filter at wherever they were at. And I was like, why don't I just like design something in Illustrator and submit it to Snapchat? They were running incredibly discounted pricing to get people to pay for it. So it cost like $5 to cover an arena for the night. And you would just put your Snapchat filter there, and you would get hundreds of thousands of views, if not in the millions of views, sometimes, 100,000 uses itself, like unique uses. And so I did that. When you swiped over it, Snapchat gave you a thing that said sponsored by, and I put my company name every time. And then at the same time, there's a tweet that exists where I tagged his manager at the time, and I was like, hey, I have an email incoming to you about some Snapchat filters. I hope you enjoy it. And then I emailed his manager, and most people, you'll learn, are firstname@domain.com. Like, it's a pretty, like, no one really thinks that much more outside of the box when it comes to their email addresses. And I emailed him, and I was just like, this one was like, I look back on it today, and I'm not very happy with the cold email. I was like, this is pretty sloppy work from my perspective. But it was like, hey, my name's Matt Varughese. I'm a college student. Like, I'm super interested in like working with you guys. I have these Snapchat filters live. I'm gonna circle back with you tomorrow with the stats on this. And I only had to do that for 2 shows before I got a response. And they were like, man, this is super cool. Like, what's your story? What's your deal? What do you want to do? So I explained what I wanted to do. Long story short, nothing actually ended up coming out of that. Like, it totally stalled. I did Snapchat filters for the rest of the tour, but I did it out of my own pocket and unofficially. And I was honestly pretty discouraged by that, but I was like, this is to the point of blind optimism. I was just like, maybe there's another in. Like, I'll figure it out eventually. And I just kept tinkering with things, and I kept shipping things for Chance. I would work with his nonprofit. I actually did work directly with his nonprofit at the end of the day, and like we did some design work together. But one day his manager had posted on his Instagram story and said, I'm looking for a web designer for my wine, like my winery brand. And I was just like, oh, that's me. Like, I'm not a Snapchat filter guy. I'm a web guy. Like let me do this. And so I ended up doing that site. We went through multiple iterations of that site, but he really liked working with me. And he was just like, I didn't realize you did web stuff. And I was like, yeah, this is like all I do. I don't do like no one hires me for Snapchat filters. And he was like, at the time, I'm not really sure about the back end function of the deal. I don't know how it worked, but there was some brand deal between Squarespace and Squarespace's corporate office and Chance's team, in which Chance's team would get to build the new chancewraps.com website with Squarespace's developers and designers directly. But they needed a liaison on Chance's side to make sure that the tech things that Chance wanted, the design things that he wanted, were properly communicated in between both parties. And so that's what I was asked to originally do, essentially be the bridge between Chance and Squarespace on the technical side of things. And so I did that for a while, and then a month later, we were asked to do a lot of design work. And it was so funny. Me and Ben Parker, who was vital to the project, lovely human being. I couldn't have done this project without him. We would design things in Webflow, and then we would send the Webflow link to Squarespace's corporate office, which I think is just hilarious. And they'd be like, sorry, we can't accept this. And so they would have to, but the effect that we were going for is what Chance wanted. And so Squarespace's team would have to go rebuild it, and in Squarespace itself, but like with custom dev. And it just took so much longer. And I think there's just like beautiful irony in all of that. And anyways, we just kept tinkering. And then that website turned into building Rapper Radio, which is a web app that currently exists on Webflow actually for Chance the Rapper. And then I ended up doing a lot of e-commerce operations for him and working through a lot of that at scale. And it just evolved into this big thing of like, oh, I get to do all these cool things and with someone that I love and someone I look up to and really admire. And it was cool. It was a really great experience. I think so fondly of it. I really want to work with another artist, like musical artist. So there's some on my dream clients list today. But that's the Chance the Rapper one.
Oh, dude, that's so fantastic. So to me, it sounds like it comes down to that blind optimism, shooting your shot, which is, yeah, like a common thread. I think you shot your shot multiple times for that one, which is crazy. And I don't think enough people do it. I don't think I've ever done that. Like actually just sent a cold email to a dream client. And I think you're inspiring me to do that because I like that, and I hope everybody listening shoots their shot as well, because that's the way to do the things that you kind of want to do.
Yeah, it works so much more often than you think. I think that my acceptance rate of someone at least booking a meeting is greater than 80%. I don't do them often. I do them very targeted. I usually have a deliverable attached, so it's like a very thoughtful. I think that where people get cold emails wrong is they think that they load it into SalesLoft or some email sequencing tool, and they're like, do you want to outsource your team to like us? And it's like, no. Like, I'm sure you get these emails yourself. I'm like, no.
So many.
Bug off. Like, I don't care to even, this is immediate archive. I don't even respond. But if you're just like, hey, I think you're really cool. I built you something. If you like it, it's yours. If not, no worries. Have a good day. That works like so often as just a format. I did this recently, 2 weeks ago, I saw a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company was stepping down and starting their own company. And I actually got the email wrong, but it was a catch-all email, and she ended up responding anyways. And I was like, look, I think you're really cool. I respect what you've built. You seem to be like onto something really interesting, and I'd love to work together. And she booked a call with me, and we're like going to do projects together. And
nice.
It's just so much more like to just be genuinely interested in someone and be like, look, I think this is dope. I think I could help. I'd like to like bring your vision to life and like ideate on things with you. That's really powerful. It's better than like, hey, my name's Matt, like, let's collab. Like, I was talking to Hassan about this, our comedian client, and he was just like, you had the best cold email I've ever received because, like, I don't think you understand how many emails I get a day where people are just like, oh, let's link, let's collab, let's do something. And it's like, there's no clear ask. There's no like, what do you want to do? What do you do? What are you good at? What are you interested in? What do you want from me? But like, if you line up your email where it's just like, this is what I want. This is what I want to do. Here's what I need from you. Give me a green light. It's yours if you want it. There's no strings attached for you. I'm not trying to pull some long con on you. It works to just be like intentional about it. So, yeah, I could talk about cold emails all day. It's like the one thing that I don't think I'm good at many things in life, probably most things, but cold emails are one of them.
Yeah. No, it sounds like you got some good success with them. Yeah, I think that something that people forget is like, especially when you're like cold emailing like busy people, like they don't have time to like try to sort out what you want out of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's an obvious like, no, I don't want to talk to you. It's so like simple for them to not engage with that. But if you take the time to like build something for them, or like just show that you're actually invested in them and want to work with them specifically. I think that's the key to that.
100%.
Yeah. So, I mean, it also sounds like shooting your shots with some of these clients got you some maybe newer, like high profile clients, like, cause you know, they've seen your experience working with some of them and they know you're capable of doing it. Is that kind of the case for some of these other ones? Like,
it's a good question. With Hassan, I think he, like the thing he knows from me when I emailed him, was like, oh, I did all the Chance the Rapper's like web stuff. And I had sent him links to the things that I had worked on. And so I did leverage that into the next thing. But with Ellen DeGeneres is actually a referral. I did not cold email.
Oh, interesting.
Them. Yeah, it was a referral from someone else working on a project with them. And so I just had a good connection and someone thought well enough of me to refer us. And
nice.
So there was that one. And then Dr. Huberman was actually a referral as well. It is I mean, there's something to be said about building your network in general. It's like, yeah, these are cool clients,
Totally.
but like, and honestly, I probably would have cold emailed both of them, especially Dr. Huberman, because I love his content.
Yeah, he's
but
awesome.
yeah, exactly. But I think there's something like there's two sides to this you have to work. You have to do cold emails, but like there's a very real, like that whole saying of like it's not about what you know, but who you know. Like having a very deep and rich network in general opens more doors than I think a cold email. Cold emailing can open a lot of doors. Don't get me wrong, but like having people that look out for you and like, hey, you should meet so and so. That's very valuable in and of itself. Probably many more times valuable than a cold email, because you essentially have a one-to-many relationship with having a rich network. So yeah.
Yeah, totally. I think probably 90% of the work that we get is from referrals, and I think it's really easy as an agency owner freelancer to just get upset or especially when a project goes sideways or something and you kind of just like there's some tension or whatever. It's really easy to like want to just be negative or put a bad light on somebody or whatever. But I think just touching every person you interact with in your business, it just be a pleasant experience for them.
Yeah.
If you can just continue to do that forever, like you'll end up having a great network, and I think that's so important.
Totally. I think, well, I mean, you know this better than most business owners would, but like a good word of mouth and good client service will keep you going a long way. It will sustain you for many years to come. Peter Kang, who's someone I don't know him personally, but he's someone I really admire in the agency space. He has a good set of tweets about this, about like in general, like his company Barrel, or his agency,
yeah.
is, they're sustained off of referrals, and they've been sustained. He's been in the game for a long time. I respect anyone that has been in the agency game for more than 10 years, because I feel like I age 10 years every year in the agency game. And so the fact that Peter and his business partners have lasted so long, I'm like, yo, real recognize real. You have to be good to you can't last this long in this space without being generally a talented company, but also good to people, good to employees, good to your clients. So I think it's a huge part of client experience, running an agency. It's like word of mouth will take you so far.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think it's probably the most important thing to consider when you're kind of talking with clients or working with clients is just leave a good impression always.
Totally.
Yeah, highly suggest that to anybody. So we were talking about like high profile clients, but you also kind of work with startups at 80/20, and I'm curious like what the dynamic differences are between those two, because I'm sure the relationships are much different, or there's probably a lot more bureaucracy in the high profile side of things versus startups. Or I'm just curious like if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, okay. How do I say this in a way that is kosher? I think if you want to be successful, you should work with a lot of startups and enterprises. If you want to have fun, though, a lot of fun, you should work with creators and celebrities.
Okay.
It is, I think the experience, I love working with startups and enterprises. They especially the ones that have their stuff together. It is a delightful experience to be on the receiving end of. But candidly, a lot of clients, it can be hard to work, especially in the enterprise side of things. I know you have some enterprise clients yourself, but it's in these large organizations of hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of people. We just signed a client a couple months ago that has 25,000 employees. And it's in these orgs, there is just a myriad of decision making and stakeholder sign off and things like that. Even if they have their stuff together, approvals just take forever. But
Totally.
You get one dialed in. I really like working with Dustin because even a couple nights ago, we were just in a text thread of he just announced his tour yesterday. And we were building the new site or whatever. And it's kind of just we were just shipping. We were iterating on the fly. And it's there's only one person that needs to sign off here. It's him. And it's we're good. This is live now. And so I think I'm very grateful for both sets of clients. I think one of the interesting things that our COO asked our recruiter whenever she saw our client list was, she was like, so do they only work with celebrities? Are they specifically that's their lane? And I clarified this with her in a later interview. I was like, the way I see these subsets is actually I think these celebrity clients actually help me close my B2B deals with startups and enterprises. Because the decision makers on the startup and enterprise side are still human beings at the end of the day. They're interested in art, culture, music, entertainment. So if you have a very rich set of people that they look up to under your client roster, there's an inherent trust factor there that I really appreciate. It was not planned, but it is an unexpected benefit of working with kind of these two subsets. But I really do like working with startups and enterprises, especially when there's a certain size in which they're small enough to continue iterating without a lot of pushback or problems. But they're big enough to have enough resources to build a really dope project and let us envision a lot of things. Or sometimes we have some clients that are it's not a hard and fast rule, which is why I'm hesitant to say something on air, because I know there's a lot of exceptions. But I have clients that are thousands of employees that you would think on paper are a very bureaucratic organization, but you get the right decision maker and the right stakeholder to remove blockers for you, and it is the greatest project in the whole world. It's you get to dream big, you get unblocked, you don't have to be in a meeting with 12 stakeholders, all I've been on meetings where I've just been do they even know I'm here? like I feel like and it's a good thing, I suppose, that they like treat us as an employee, because that's always our goal, that they feel like we're part of their team. It is like our North Star. It's in every proposal. But sometimes I'm just like, this feels like a lot of internal, like, we need e-team support on this thing, and we need to get a sign off and confirmation on this thing. And like, it's just like, sometimes we get roped into things that like, it just feels more admin-y when you work with a large enterprise. But I'm very grateful to them, and I think they're like, I love working with these clients, especially because, I mean, they are what drive our business today. It is not the celebrity clients, it's not the creator clients, but we're so grateful for them as well. So it's a yin and yang, I guess, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, that's super, super interesting because, I feel the same way about, like, you mentioned kind of like some of the bureaucracy and a few things. Like, I think every client we kind of talk to is just different experience every single time.
Totally.
I don't know if you noticed the clients you talk to, but I feel like we have to unpack what they're trying to do every single time. And it's always like a unique experience where you're trying to just solve the problem. And I'm sure the dynamics between those two different things I find it becomes hard to determine processes within the business because you're molding your situation to every single client every single time you talk to them.
Yes, exactly. I think a good agency can help untangle a lot of things, and I think it's one of the things we do well. Because if you show up to something and you expect every decision to be made and every question to be answered and things like that, you're going to have a very bad time as an agency owner.
Totally.
But if you're willing to like kind of get into the thick of it with them, you will have a very long and successful career in agencies and client work, in my opinion. That's just a significant, it's strategic thinking, which is, as an agency owner, it's where you want to be. You don't really want to be in the design and development's good, but like everyone does design and development. The thinking is what matters. How you approach a project is what matters. How you untangle things is what matters. How you set someone up for long-term success is what matters. So there's a lot of nuance there that I think a lot of people miss when running an agency, that they expect the decisions to be made when they come. Especially, I mean, I made these mistakes for a long time where I was like, what do you want? But it's like part of your role is like, oh, you need to figure that out together. Like, we should ideate on this together. So I think that's really important.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's like proactive versus reactive. Like, you want to be like trying to solve their problems for them. And I think that's an important piece. And another kind of mistake I did early, I think, was like trying to set a bunch of boundaries really early because you got jaded by a certain project or how that one project went. And you're like, okay, it's never going to go like that again.
Yeah.
These rules you're playing in this box, and it's just a completely different experience, and it's just not a good experience for them. So like, I'm just trying to, I think with every interaction, just trying to be as moldable as possible, flexible to them, try to untangle their stuff, and try to be proactive versus reactive to whatever they're doing.
How do you find the balance there of like, I go back and forth on this all the time, and I don't have a good answer on it. I think one of the mistakes I have made in my career is that I've been too flexible with clients, to where it's like, Max actually noted this the other, maybe a few months ago at this point, where he was just like, I think we say yes to clients a lot, but like it is at our detriment to say yes sometimes. Because it's like, however you want to work, we'll work with you. But it's like, there is still an element here of like, we are experts, and like we know kind of the lane this should go in, and like maybe we like, I haven't found this like middle ground yet. I know it exists. I know some agencies do it really well, but like there is a balance to be had of like, you don't want to be too rigid. I don't want to run an agency where like you have to work exactly how we work. But I also know that allowing ultimate flexibility and infinite like variability can lead to like more difficult projects to run. Maybe deadlines are missed. Maybe scope it creeps. Have you found the balance of that?
No, not even close.
I get that. Yeah, I haven't noticed that.
Yeah, I mean it's so tough. It's like the hardest part about running an agency in my mind. I think it's a lot easier when you got a smaller team, and I'm like, I find it easy when I'm running the ship, and I can kind of like, I can move things around, and I can kind of like delegate tasks and stuff, and I can take it in and unpack it, and then like give it to the team members and stuff like that. But whenever we've tried to scale, it just gets harder and harder because I can't replace me or whatever. You got to have somebody else doing that unpacking in some cases, and it creates a different experience. So we've tried to put rules in. It didn't work too that well. And then, I mean, one client right now we're working, it's just like it changes forever. Like it's like impossible to like wrangle it in. And that's the stuff that I would really like to wrangle in and figure out how to set rules on. But sometimes, you just want to make the client happy. I'm a people pleaser at heart, so it's so tough.
Oh man, I get that. I am too, and it is to my personal detriment, but it is to the client's ultimate benefit by far. Like they will always walk like it, because it destroys me when a client isn't happy. It destroys me when an employee isn't happy.
Me too.
Like I understand. I don't like letting people down, and it eats me alive. But I also know that's how I talk to some of my agency friends about this a lot, actually. I'm like, there's got to be a middle ground between like where I am now and like also still shipping great projects, but like not losing sleep over like, this client interaction went poorly, or this client's pissed at me or whatever, and like it bothers me. I'm still trying to find it. I'm sure I'll find it one day. I'm very confident of that. Maybe it's blind optimism again, but I think it exists. And I'm looking forward to finding it at some point.
Well, when you find it, please let me know.
I will.
Give me a full breakdown of that middle ground because I'm still trying to figure it out. Like when it comes to that, like I don't mind having the pain of the scenario. Like I'm founder, whatever. I got to take the pain sometimes. But what bothers me is when the team gets stressed because of that lack of boundaries.
Yeah. And
that's where the line needs to draw. Or, I mean, I should probably be worrying about my mental health as well too. But like that's how I think about it. You know what I mean? Like I can take the punches a little bit, but when it starts to affect the team, that's where it becomes an issue.
Totally. Yeah, I get that.
Cool. Well, I got one last thing I want to chat about.
Sure.
Just Webflow in general. Because I know you're an early power user. You said earlier that you were a moderator. And I'm sure that relationship has just grown into such a great collaboration. And I'm curious, like, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the journey of Webflow in general and like how you feel about its growth and where you see it going a little bit. Big question, but
yeah, it's a great question. So when I started working in Webflow I think I wasn't like early power user like someone like Vincent or Nelson. Like those people are legends to me. Like they will always be legends because they were just so early. Or someone like Waldo. But I think I'd started working in Webflow when there were about 70 people. Because I had found Webflow the week Ben Parker had joined Webflow. I had met him on Twitter, and I was like, oh, shoot, you live in Oklahoma. You seem like a decent dude. You want to get coffee? And he showed me Webflow, and he's like, I'm just starting here, like this week. I did a week out there. It was great. And I've seen the company now evolve into, I think, 500, 600 employees at this point. And it's been quite a ride. I think to see it evolve and iterate and see them ship things and kill things and listen to the community and fuck up with the community, but then repair it with the community. Like there have been a lot has happened in the last few years in the space, and specifically with Webflow. And when in the first iterations of 80/20, we were essentially a general no-code agency. Anything you wanted no-code under the sun, we would do it. We would do Webflow, Bubble, Glide, Adalo, Zapier, Make, whatever it might be, like we would do it. It was a bad idea. And over time, though, we iterated, and I made the bet of like, okay, this Webflow thing seems really solid. I think it's going to be around for a while. It seems like it's the future of web design and development. And so we went all in. We don't do anything else. If we get a bubble lead, we refer it out. If we get a dollar, we refer it out. We don't do any back office automation anymore unless it's part of a larger project. We were just like, selfishly, I was like, I enjoy this work the most. So we're just going to do design and Webflow development. We're not going to do anything else. But to bet on it's a risky move, candidly. I've gotten feedback on that, like even ahead of us going public. Our parent company is publicly traded, and that's part of 80/20 is now on the TSX through Tiny. Nice. But one of the things that there was a very intense due diligence process, and I think one of the things that came up with the former guy running how do I explain this? There is an intermediary company in between Tiny and 80/20 called Beam that owns and operates all the agencies, technically. It co-owns and operates all the agencies. And the guy they had running Beam made a good point. He was like, you kind of have platform risk in this regard. He's like, what if Webflow goes down? What if they go under? What if they make a bad move? They raise a bad round. They make a series of moves that destroys the platform. And it's like, well, you're right. But this is a calculated risk of I could be one of the multiple generalist agencies, or I could say, this platform, I've seen it evolve, and I very much so trust the roadmap. I trust senior leadership. I know these people quite well at this point. And it's like, I have enough information, I've seen enough that I can confidently say that this platform is going to be around for the long run. And I empathize with your point of view that there is platform risk, and I'm not even denying that. You're 100% correct. But there is more risk in our business in us being a shitty generalist agency than there is platform risk. And I am much more likely to bet on Webflow as a platform than us making it as we do full service everything. We're your media buyer. We're your designer. We're your developer. We're your videographer. Jack of all trades, master of none. And I want to be us to be a master of Webflow. And I think we've made a lot of progress. We've built a lot of connections. This relationship that we have with Webflow today is very meaningful. We've built it a lot. I've spoken at their last 2 internal conferences. It's been a wild ride. And I'm very grateful to be part of it. To answer your question, I guess more succinctly, I do think Webflow is going to be on a rocket ship of growth, especially now with apps and that whole rollout. The API looks significantly better, significantly stronger. And I think this is now, I honestly think with the apps release, Webflow is going to be on a very, it was already on a very solid trajectory, but this is going to be hockey stick level of people coming into the platform. Because it's think of Shopify before Shopify apps. I remember my business partner, I think he got asked by Toby or Harley from Shopify to do themes for Shopify's theme store before it opened. And he was like, why would I do that? That'd be a waste of time or whatever when I could just keep selling more expensive builds. And I think he had told me it was one of his regrets to this day of I should have listened. I should have been there early, because that was, that ecosystem of apps and themes in general, Webflow already has a themes thing, but with apps as well, to be part of that early on, I think anyone in the Webflow space has this opportunity to join something really cool really early on and make an impact. I think it's really cool what Mason is doing with Slater and the Edgar Allan team is doing with Slater. And I saw he made his first dollar on the Webflow app ecosystem. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, this is about to be the wild, wild west in the best way possible. And I think that's a great, great thing for the ecosystem as a whole, for Webflow, for users, for clients, for everyone.
Yeah, no. I was so surprised they dropped that announcement before Webflow Conf.
I know. Right? Yeah.
I was like, damn, this is what do they got cooking for the conference?
Yeah.
Damn. But yeah, you brought up the Shopify app ecosystem. I think that so many people have built $million businesses. I don't know if this is right, but I think Tiny has some connection to or owns some Shopify apps.
Orbit apps. Is their Shopify apps.
Yeah. So yeah, like to me, there's a whole huge opportunity there to make huge businesses. It's just very early stages. So anybody listening, dig into those docs,
Totally.
try to figure out how, like if you have an idea, go after it. Cause I think it's going to be huge as well. But yeah, you mentioned, just going all in on Webflow. I think for me, like I didn't start Flow Sparrow thinking I was going to be Webflow forever or whatever. I just kind of started with that blind optimism a little bit, like whatever, I can do this. But then I got into it, and I think what sealed the deal for me and made me a full-time cult member is going to Webflow Conf last year and talking with Vlad and Sergey and Bryant, like, and just like talking to those people and seeing how cool they were, and meeting a bunch of team members and like getting to know a lot of the team there, because I think it comes from the top down, and with a lot of companies like this, and I think they're genuine in their goals and their path, and it just gives me a lot of faith to see what they're doing and how nice everybody is and all the stuff they're shipping. I feel like, in the past couple months they've been like on a really solid shipping like trend of just fixing a lot of things that a lot of people have been asking for, and that type of energy really excites me and continues my faith in Webflow. And so yeah, I'm with you on the long haul thing. I think I'm just like down with a bet. If it goes down, I'll just go do something else.
If it goes down, it's like, okay, we had a good run. On to the next thing. We'll either iterate the company as a whole, and I'll figure something else out, or we had a great run, and it is what it is. So
yeah, for
everything is an experiment. This included the company, and so it's not. None of this is detrimental in the grand scheme of things. Like
totally,
almost everything is recoverable and reversible, and I think things will be fine in the grand scheme of things. Even if there is platform risk, like it is what it is.
Yeah. Okay, but speaking of Webflow Conf, you got a little speaking engagement coming up with your pal Ben Parker.
Oh yeah.
In New York. I think it's just under a month. This episode might come out a couple weeks before. But yeah, I'm super excited. So it's called Dream Big, Build Bigger, Extending Webflow for Dream Projects and Clients with Ben Parker.
Yes.
Are you excited? Nervous?
I am excited, yes. Nervous, yes. I'm generally like a major introvert, and so public speaking and doing that sort of thing, I've done it a lot, but there's never a time in which I'm just like, I'm like going to give a talk. I mean, there's a part of it that's like that, but it's like, shit, I got to give a talk. Like me and Ben signed up for it, and I was like so hyped, and then it got accepted, and I was like, shit, what did I do? Like, this is a terrible idea for me to go do public speaking again. And but a little bit of exposure therapy never hurt anyone, and I am ultimately excited about the talk. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. It's only going to be 15 minutes, but I think it's going to be pretty packed with information about working with your dream clients and how you can extend Webflow to do a lot more within the platform and essentially build bigger without having to be limited by Webflow itself, essentially.
Yeah, that's super exciting. I think I didn't submit an application because I'm nervous.
I get it, dude. I'm with you. Next year, I expect to see you on the big stage in San Francisco giving a keynote talk alongside Vlad.
All right, sounds good. I'll give it a try.
Cool.
But yeah, that's exciting. Are you gonna be in the San Francisco one as well, or?
I will be at San Francisco. I think I leave the day after though. I go to Boston briefly, and then I go to the New York one as well.
Damn.
And so I'll be at SF in New York.
Nice. Well, I'll actually see you at both, hopefully.
Incredible.
Both SF and New York. Because, like, I got tickets to the SF one. I don't have tickets to the New York one, but I'm going to the workshops, and I'm sure I'll be hanging around. If there's any, like, after parties or dinners or anything like that, I'm going to try to sneak into the main one and see your talk. But I want to make sure that people, if there's space for somebody from New York, could actually go in and
that's fair. That's
me double dipping.
Have you seen what's his name? Eric Andre, that gif of him going, "Let me in," like he's just like walking up to the White House and shaking the gate. I think you should do that. I think that's the best path forward, and I think they'll just let you in.
Yeah, no, I just got to show them my Webflow tattoo, and they'll let me in.
Yo, okay, talk about someone making a long-term bet on something. That is commitment. I saw that. Commitment to the nines. Like when I got my first tattoo, I was like, oh man, this is gonna be on my body forever. Like I gotta make sure it's right. I gotta make sure it looks good. And you were just like, no, I'm all in on the platform. And that is a power move to the nth degree. If anyone should have Webflow free for life, it's you. You should have Webflow, like account access for free, hosting for free. If I worked there, I'd be advocating for you in this regard. That is a next level commitment, and I have so much respect for it.
Yeah, no, I mean it was like a crazy night. I had a couple cocktails for sure.
I was gonna ask, like, were you drunk?
Yeah, well, we were at an after party for the awards conference, and we were just chatting with like Emily and Joe Moore and a few dudes from like the Netherlands and stuff like that. And I think she just mentioned like, hey, there's a tattoo parlor downstairs, and it was literally right beside the door to the entrance to the after party thing. And yeah, I was just like, I'll do it, and it just ended up like the ball just rolled from there, and I ended up getting a tattoo, and it was so funny. And yeah, no regrets. I think it got me lots of clout points. Anytime I talk to like the Webflow team, they're like, oh, you're the dude with the tattoo.
You should honestly, it's like something you should bring up on a sales call. You should be like, there's no one else in the game that's this committed to you. Like I'm so committed to your success that I have Webflow literally tattooed on me. I think there's there's value there. Oh, you can't. Yeah, you can't really get up and like show it on screen.
Yeah, I'd have to hop on my chair and just like pull up my leg, and
that's okay.
I
Look,
think
if
it'd be a weird
if
interaction.
the occasion calls for it, then the occasion calls for it. Like if you need to show your commitment, that's what it takes. Was that your first tattoo?
Yeah, it was my first real tattoo. I have a stick and poke on my arm that I got when I was like really young from a buddy, but yeah, that was my first like real tattoo, and I kind of got the bug now. I want to get more tattoos for sure.
Oh, it's addictive. It's so addictive. I get it.
Yeah, I'm stoked on it though. I think it's a good brand, and I hope they don't rebrand.
Oh man,
they probably will. I'll have to get the new one beside it, but
no. But like if they rebrand, you have the retro version now, like the vintage throwback logo, and I think that's even cooler.
The OG. Yeah. No, I'm stoked on it, and yes, very stoked for Webflow conference. Excited to see you and chat in person. I think it was like a quick conversation we had last year in SF, but I'm excited to hang out because I think this year is going to be really fun. I mean, they're doing like 4 cities. It's just bigger and better every year, and that's why I love Webflow so much, is they just keep pushing, and it's amazing.
Totally. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, man. We'll have to kick it in person, and I'm there most of the week. I don't know when you get in, and we can talk about this offline. But it'd be a lot of fun to hang out.
Yeah, no, I'm super down. Let's think on that. But yeah, I think that's a good place to wrap it up, dude. Thank you so much for hopping on.
Of course,
I wasn't sure if you'd say yes. I wanted to get the legend.
It was an immediate
in the house.
I think I hope I respond back to you within minutes, because I was like, yeah, I'm honored to jump on. This is a lot of fun. I like the fact that you're trying content. And you were like the newsletter with the podcast, video.
Yeah,
it's super dope. And also you're like a big deal in the Webflow space as well. So it's like I'm always down to kick it with other people like yourself.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm just trying. I'm just having fun, and I think the podcast has been a lot of fun, and I like the opportunity to chat with people like you to like learn about stuff, and I feel like all the stuff we talked about was really valuable and good for me, good reminder for me, and hopefully tons of value for the people listening. So
sure.
Thank you again for hopping on, man. I appreciate it.
Cool, of course.